So good day, everyone. Excellent audience in person, and hello to everyone on the web. I first wanted to start off by introducing who Verizon is. I know it sounds like Verizon, but it's actually Verizon. We are headquartered in New York City in the United States, and we are one of the largest telecommunication companies in the world, if you're not familiar with us. We run one of the largest 5G networks in the world from a mobile perspective, and we run a significantly large fiber asset around the world. So that's who we are. We have over 100 million customers. We have a market cap of $170 billion. So that's a little bit about who we are and the scale of what we operate with over 100,000 employees. And we operate in over 100 countries/territories. So I did that for a reason. Normally, I get the opportunity to either talk about sustainability, which is awesome, or supply chain. At Verizon, we made a very conscious decision back in 2009 to merge those two functions together. And at a time where sustainability was just coming into the forefront and people were talking about, okay, energy bills in Washington, D.C., or what's going to happen with the grid throughout the EU and how do we make it more resilient and more renewable, we made a decision to marry those two together. And it was a brilliant decision at the time, and it continues to be that way. Why? Because fast forward to where we are today. Look at what took place during COVID to the supply chain. If you just think about semiconductors and you think about the challenges we had there, you think about PPE and the COVID requirements that the entire world were impacted by. This was so important from a supply chain perspective. And I grew up, I'm more on the ops side than I am the green side, but I've learned a lot. And why is that so important? Because when you think about resiliency, you think about the natural disasters, the climate impacts that have been going on everywhere. There was just another one very recently in Vietnam in the last 24 hours. When you run networks like Verizon does, and our competitors for that matter, we're about first responders. We're about making sure that connectivity is up 99.999% of the time, because it's important for that firefighter, that police person, whoever that individual is that supports life-saving activities. That's the mic drop. That's bar none. Step two is, how do you do it in the most sustainable, resilient way? So at Verizon, we very early on saw that energy was going to be our opportunity. So I'm going to go through this very quickly, but we decided right now, when you look at the grid and the activity we were doing, we had to not only green our locations, we have quite a few of them when you have telecommunications infrastructure, but there was not enough space at those locations to do, whether it's solar or turbine or hydro or whatever the case may be. So we went with our treasury team, an incredibly green financing initiative, and we launched a green bond, $1 billion. It was received incredibly well by the financial markets. What did we do with that? Well, you're all familiar with the process, but we had to do a second party opinion, and we had to say, well, we're going to use it. And then we had to be very transparent in how we were going to use those funds and then report on it every year. That was February 2019. I sit here in September of 2024. We've done 6 of them, $6 billion worth of green bonds. And I can tell you, when you run networks, you're always fighting for capital with the network team because they want to build 5G. They want to put more fiber in. And that's what we should be doing from a business perspective. But these green financing techniques gave myself and the sustainability team the ability to keep moving us forward, creating resiliency in the supply chain, but at the same time, building renewable energy into our day-to-day infrastructure. To date, we have contracted over 3.6 gigawatts of renewable energy, both on-site and what we call near load, which is in a greater proximity of where we work. And then we have some full off-site locations. But that was only one part of it. And if we were just stopped there, we would have just focused on that piece. That would have been okay. But I'm incredibly proud of the team because then we took our day-to-day operations and put that to practice. If you think about connected devices, IoT, AI, ML, you can't have any conversation without having either of those two-letter words in there. We've used that to then enable our customers. And then how do we let them take it to the next step? If you think about connected devices, we have everything from monitoring the grids to monitoring our own 5G network, making sure that radios are up when they're supposed to be up, but if it's in the middle of the night and they're very dense locations, we can ramp some of them down. So managing, building the cost of the business, the cost to run our operation, along with the impacts of emissions from that. Incredibly important when you think about the holistic piece. And then you think about these guys, devices. When you think about the device you had, and there was just an announcement yesterday out of Cupertino, California about a new device coming out, and there was one out of China about another new device coming out. The question is, where are we going with devices? Well, we've made a decision that we believe the circular economy cannot be met any better than in the device world. So on any given year, we'll get back, I'll just say millions and millions of phones through a buy one, trade one in, or any kind of offer like that. We've made the choice to revamp them, give them a second life, whether it's a certified pre-owned device, whether it may be a device that's a little bit more damaged and sell it as a wholesale and let other people. But that circular economy, that idea of not taking a phone after 2 years, tossing it away, that is a game changer. Go back to that semiconductor comment that I made earlier. If you think about all the chips that are in there and the growth of IoT and mobile devices, we couldn't even keep up as a globe in terms of the demand across the board. So the last thing I want to say, and I'm trying to be brief here because I want to take some questions if there is some. Start thinking about where do you go beyond scope 1 and scope 2. Scope 1 and scope 2, we came right out and we said we'll be net zero by 2035. Very ambitious, but we're going to get there. We had a 2025 goal of 50% of our energy being sourced from renewable energy. We've got that already locked down by the end of this year, and then we're going for 2035 with scope 1 and scope 2 across the board with our fleets and things like that. But I control that. Verizon controls that. The question comes to, and all of you know this better than I do, scope 3, your value chain. When you deal with 40 to 60 to 100,000 suppliers in any given year, your challenge is, what is your tier 1, your tier 2, and your tier 3 look like? And I got to be honest, people have to be transparent about that. You know, there's regulation coming, and we're all going to start reporting by 2026. But that transparency down your supply chain and actually ready to address the issues that are real and sometimes we don't want to see is going to be what's important. In October, I'll be doing an annual trip to Asia where I see some of my team members, but we go factory by factory. And it's not only how's the manufacturing doing, not only is it how do you think about the human rights impact of what's going on, but also where are the capacitors, the resistors, the fabrication, the chipsets, the plastics, where are they coming from? How are they sourced? How are they created? What is the resiliency of those? Not only from an operational resiliency, because I can't run out, but also from the sustainability aspect. So when I do provide a home router into someone's home or a home router, what does it look like? Is it made with ocean plastics? Well, I can tell you over 65% of the content of our current ones are made with ocean plastics. That's great. You actually we don't talk about it. Reason being, it should be how we do business. But that's one really good example. And then the last thing I'll say is that value chain. When you start to report out on that and you start to track your suppliers, I would just encourage all of you, and if any of Verizon suppliers are in the audience, we'll be coming to you very, very soon. We've set up a whole infrastructure governance of how we're going to be putting these things into our contracts. Most of them are in already, but then the timeliness and transparency of your reporting. We also have a very, very large commitment to working with diverse suppliers. And that commitment is both important for resiliency, but it's also important for all the customers we have and making sure that where we work, live, and play, we're working and supporting the types of individuals that we are. And that's a big commitment across the board from Verizon. So lastly, we have a commitment to our customers. We have a commitment to our company. We want to run, and we are going to run the greenest networks. And we'll put that up against anyone at any time. But at the same time, it's got to be about your customers. And that's where we are laser focused and bringing solutions to them to let them live a more green and sustainable life. And the last comment I'll make is for those of you who are involved with supply chain, and thank you for coming today because I like to geek out on both sides. It's not easy, and I feel your pain at times. But I encourage you to keep that communication up and keep working through those things. So I'm going to pause there and turn it over and see if we had any questions.
James, thank you very much indeed. Look, let's go to the audience. Do we have any immediate questions going up? Again, if we could just dip the light so I could see any hands, I'd be very grateful. One at the front, that's nice and easy. Just wait for the mic to get down to you.
Hi, James. Thank you for a great session. My question really is, and I think you've touched on it during your talk, what are the key challenges, future challenges you see between balancing business growth and sustainability, especially in the tech sector?
Yeah, we were having a conversation earlier. The advent of AI is both a blessing to consumers and enterprises, but it's in a way a curse to data centers and hyperscalers. When you start looking at the amount of data throughput that's going through, the amount of data centers that are required, I would say that's going to be one of the biggest challenges, balancing that load. I heard someone say earlier that AI is not for everyone yet, but it will be. But the question will be, how do you balance the advent of AI, the solutions that come, with making sure you're caring for your climate impacts at the exact same time? And then just the second quick part of that, the biggest issue across the board, and it's not just the tech sector, it's going to be how do we handle the resiliency of the major natural disasters that are going on? Because COVID was one example with a pandemic. I'm more concerned right now with the typhoon that just happened in Vietnam, with some of the things that are going on with earthquakes off of Taiwan, when you think about chipsets and all the things that people like TSMC have to deal with. Those are the things in our supply chain that I believe the tech sector is going to be most impacted by.
Thank you, James. Any further questions from the room? One over there. This is definitely how I get my steps up today, that's for sure.
Hi, James. Thanks very much for a very insightful talk. My name's Morag, and I work within electronics, so I appreciated your comments on semiconductors, especially post-pandemic. My question for you is about the electronic supply chain. How do you demand sustainable change from your EMS provider or from whoever creates your PCBA?
Yeah, it's probably been one of the biggest things that you've seen globally, especially in the United States, where we've looked at the different requirements that have come out from the United States government in terms of whether our largest customer is the United States government, by the way, wherever they are around the world, but the requirements that they're putting on the supply chain, because it's not just on the electronics piece, it's everything that goes in the BOM, the bill of materials. When you think about just purely the electronics piece, is how are these new fabs, which are coming all over? There's some here in Europe. There's several coming up in the United States, which take 3 to 4 to 5 years to come online. Are they being built sustainably? Have they cared for? And one of the biggest challenges is water across the board. But then have they built them in such a way that at the end of the useful life of the product, is there any chance to harvest any of that? It's a big, big conversation because it comes right down to the core of the manufacturing and how things are done. And I don't have an answer for you exactly. It's something we are working very closely on to make sure that we have the right answer long term.
Okay, we have time for one more question. If it's very, very quick, we have a couple of minutes left on this session. And we have one. It was always going to be at the back, wasn't it?
Thanks for your time, James. It's been really interesting. Conscious of not getting this too political, but I'm interested to understand in America if Verizon has faced any political pressures in terms of sustainability, ESG, etc.
What I would say is, I'll give you the perfect PR response. We support all state, federal, and local laws wherever we operate around the globe. And we will make sure that we are abiding by that because we are good corporate citizens wherever we operate. I will tell you that I don't think it's pressure. I think the other term is understanding. You might be aware that there's a presidential election going on in the United States in November. I don't know, it hasn't made much news, but in the US it has. We don't know where that's going to end up, and we really don't care, to be perfectly frank, and I'm not being flippant with that. We have our plan. We're going to do what we have to do. We've made our long-term and short-term commitments. We're going to achieve them. We're going to be transparent in our ESG report, and we're also in our annual report. Many of these factors are in there. And then the other way we look at it is if something new does come up, CSDDD, CSRD, whatever those, where we start in 2026 reporting, we're going to do that. And we're going to have to achieve what is required for us to do business, because that's just who we are and it's in our DNA.
And James, if your PR department were listening to that answer, I'm sure you would have got some kind of special sticker, hat or badge for ticking all the boxes. So James, thank you so much. If anyone has more questions for James, he will be back in our panel at 10:50. Well, a quick break and we're back with Diageo.
Yeah.